Everybody wants to, you know, be empowered, be the god, and command little tiny digital people. Maybe in other markets, maybe in China, where they do spend hours on their mobile devices, that could work, but in the West, not so much. What is your resume? What have you done during that time? You know, hey, our studio's above Drake's Brewery, you know. Some people really like that. That's about all we had.
Thanks for joining us today. Today we have with us a special guest. It's Kip Katsarelis, who is one of the leaders at Magic Fuel Games. This is a company that builds SimCity-like games for mobile platforms. And we talked a little bit about the secret of building your own cities and why is it so popular. We discussed how to hire great people. And we talked a little bit about what's going to happen with our industry in the next 5 years. First of all, I thank you for joining and finding the time. But before we kind of jump in, can you do like a little intro about yourself and about your company? What do you guys do? What products are you building? That kind of thing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my name's Kip Katsarelis. I'm Chief Product Officer at Magic Fuel Games. I've been in the games industry for probably a little over 20 years, mostly at Electronic Arts and Maxis in particular. I worked on the Sims franchise, Spore, and then was executive producer on the last SimCity PC game and expansion pack. And that's where Magic Fuel was sort of formed. So we, majority of the founders, the founders at the time, we all worked at Maxis. We've been working together for a long time. They, as you know, they closed our studio kind of after SimCity 2013 was released. We released an expansion, and then we were working on actually exploring some mobile products at that time. And we all kind of lived together and carpooled together, and we were, you know, sort of the heads of that studio, and you know, thought we had some really good people, and we all worked together, complemented each other really well, and we formed Magic Fuel Games. It was founded by CSUN Games in China, and we've been really focused on mobile products, and we've got our first game was Fort Stars. It's sort of a build battle game, and that's on App Store and iOS. And we had already been investigating, I guess, a little bit into that build battle space, and kind of carried that over with us, and thought there was a nice blend of, hey, there's some city building kind of elements there. Oh, and it's got this kind of combat side, which is really cool and kind of new for us. And that's where Fort Stars sort of came from, and we published that with PlayStack. And then after that, we worked on a cooking game, believe it or not. So love cooking, and that was sort of a cooking simulation, fun little, you know, mix ingredients together and make really kind of photo quality, you know, stuff you'd want to share with your friends, little plates. And then the other game we worked on was sort of, you know, after Fort Stars was World War Bots, and that was another revenge battler, but with big giant robots, and that's available again on the App Store. And lately we've kind of gone back to our roots, which is really city builders and simulation, and now we've been working on sort of an unannounced title in that space.
So I have kind of like a general question, and probably Will Wright is a better person to answer. But let's put yourself in his shoes. What do you feel is the secret of popularity of like city building genre? Because it seems like these kind of games since SimCity, they have been around since forever in different forms and variations on mobile and on PC and on consoles everywhere. What do you feel are like these things that really, you know, tick with people that they want to play more of those titles?
Right. and I work with Will quite a bit on a few projects, and he'd probably have his own unique answer. For me, I think it's a couple things. I think it's they're sort of God games. Everybody wants to be empowered, be the god, and command little tiny digital people. I think there's just something appealing about that. I think we all live in cities where you live somewhere, you've been somewhere. It's, some small, some large, some famous, some not. And I think there's a natural. You understand sort of how cities work. There's kind of the functional side of them. There's the politics. There's the social side of things, and I think there's a desire to want to kind of recreate your own world in a way. And I think city builders really give players that power and that ability to kind of create their own worlds, be it a perfect utopia or maybe something that's not quite there, or recreating the city that you live in. So I just think that there's something that could relate to really anyone, both gamers and even non-gamers.
When you think of this genre kind of moving to different platforms, because I remember I used to play a lot of SimCity on a computer, but then I think at a time EA decided to do like a social media version of it for Facebook. And for like almost a year, my entire Facebook was covered in people asking for some resources or some other messages like on the feed. And you were kind of pushing this genre on mobile. Like, what are kind of the fundamental things that stay the same, and what are the things that are changing when you're kind of shifting from one platform to another?
Right. I think if we're talking about mobile in particular, I think what the mobile gamer wants, at least in the West, in Western markets, is a pretty different experience than what you're looking for on your PC. On your PC, you're looking for something where you could sit in front of your computer for hours and really kind of get lost in whatever game you're playing. And on mobile, it's a little bit more. People are looking for a quick escape, a time killer, really just to relax. And so I think the experience doesn't necessarily translate. I don't think you could take, and actually EA did this. We made SimCity Deluxe. We brought that over onto mobile, and it didn't do too well. It was just too complex. But you're looking for, I think you're still looking for all the, if we're talking about city builders in particular, I want to make a unique city. I want to make something that feels, I created it. It looks like a big city. It looks like it's busy and alive. But I want to do that in a very simple way. I want to be able to do that in short periods of time. I don't want to read a manual on how to play the game. So I need a really nice, easy onboarding experience, and I need controls and gameplay that it's just something I could kind of very intuitive, something I could pick up and just play. Where again on PC, you're probably looking at a little bit more powerful tools and more creation, more depth in the simulation, more depth in the stats, the data, everything. Where I think on mobile, at least what we've seen so far is that's not quite what they're looking for. Maybe in other markets, maybe in China, where they do spend hours on their mobile devices, that could work, but in the West, not so much.
So when you're talking about these shorter sessions and kind of like a different perspective of what does the player want from this platform, my experience is like whenever you're trying to download a game similar to that, it's basically it has to look a certain way. That's kind of like my takeaway. It has to look a certain way, like maybe stylized, cute, something in that direction. Sometimes they do very nice kind of pixel art kind of strategies and so on. In terms of visual design in general, what are kind of like the biggest challenges or problems or tricks or trips or something of building assets for these particular types of games, but for mobile? Because it seems like it's a tiny screen, you don't really see much, it has to really pop, and it has to look like this ant farm where everything's kind of moving, right? How do you kind of approach this? Like, what are the elements? How do you build this feeling of a sprawling city on a smaller screen?
Right. Definitely challenges. And you also have devices of, you're talking about a lot of low end devices that you need the game to work on. So that's actually a huge consideration. Battery life, these type of things. So, I think, yes, you do see a lot of the kind of more stylistic art style. The pixel art, does really well. But you've also seen really kind of high quality, I'd call them AAA graphics on mobile as well. And I think there is an expectation for that these days. I think SimCity Build It was gorgeous. They used a lot of our assets from the 2013 PC game actually, and it came out quite beautiful. And so I think you got a range of actual art styles that could work on there. But I think making things work across all the different devices is a huge challenge. I think lighting's always a challenge. Getting shadows to look right. And a nice day-night cycle. These things are challenging, and just for city builders in particular, they're so complex. Like you said, these little ant farms of there's sort of macro level detail that you need to care about. How does the city look from the rooftops, the skyline, to, hey, I want to get in there and look at the city and sort of the people and things moving around. And you need to, as a game designer, developer, you need to make the right choices on, okay, what are the things I care about? Because you only could do so much. Make those things visually pop and kind of pick your battles. And you'll see, I know for us, we look at you've got the buildings themselves, but then the props, on the roofs and the signage and those things are really important and give a lot of character to these inanimate buildings. And then, you also want to kind of take care of that in close scene as well. So, we look at things like vignettes and we want to see, draw people in the streets and cars moving around and those kind of things. And we just try to find that nice balance between the two.
Okay, so you mentioned that you worked in kind of a lot of companies and you spend a lot of time at EA, which is like this big, huge conglomerate, a lot of different studios, and there are hundreds of different popular franchises came out of that studio. And you mentioned that you work with Wright and kind of like this visionary that created the whole genre and almost like changed the entire industry. The Sims were for like bestsellers for, I don't know, a decade probably on the best-selling game. My question is, talking about these challenges that you're trying to solve on mobile with your team and thinking about your experience back in EA, what do you feel were the major changes in the way that video game developers create games? Like, what are the things that changed, drastically compared to the good old days?
Well, the good old days are probably still around in some places. I mean, for us personally, we went from, EA, lots of resources, big teams, 100 plus, folks, across multiple studios, multiple time zones too. Smaller dev teams, typically the mobile studios are, in the 25 person range. I think we got up to a little bit above 30. But it's kind of doing more with less, I guess. really having people who aren't so much really just focused on one thing, looking for folks that have multiple skill sets, who can wear a lot of hats, who are self-driven, and really look, professionals who know what we're trying to get done and are capable of getting those things done. And yeah, I think for us, it's just that shift from kind of smaller, leaner, quicker, faster, versus, hey, we've got massive teams, massive resources, huge marketing departments, which all those things have their own challenges as well.
So what are kind of the things that allowed to do these incredible titles with smaller teams at this day and age? Like, we speak a lot on 80 level about the technology that is kind of becoming more accessible, as well as probably hardware, although it's still kind of pretty expensive. But you can buy a pretty nice computer. You can get a free version of, let's say, Unity, and you start tinkering and building something. And there are like numerous examples. Like, there are indie licenses for Houdini, there are indie licenses for Maya, there are licenses that are not as expensive for, let's say, Adobe tools and so on. Apart from tools, are there any other things that kind of made game development kind of more accessible?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Unity. I guess that's a huge change, and that's what we use. And there's other game engines out there now that when you're talking about when The Sims was first formed, these things didn't exist. So they've got pipelines and graphic engine that's proven, and they've got their team of engineers that are helping with bugs, and that's a huge advantage. That versus when you're working on your kind of own homebrewed tech pipelines, things like that. So and there's companies out there that offer full backends now, and so all that is really helpful and allows us to kind of move quicker in this space for sure.
You talked a little bit about the people whom you hire, and mentioned that these guys should have kind of like more of a jack of all trades mentality, being generalists, trying to solve different challenges, not just kind of concentrating on one unique problem like they sometimes do in bigger companies, where they have like one guy who's just doing textures, right, materials, and like one guy who's just doing like animation. Do you have, and the question is like, how do you find those people? Where do you look for them? How do you know if he's gonna be kind of like this jack of all trades kind of person that fits into your team?
Right. I mean, I don't know if we have a magic secret sauce to find that. We post our jobs in all the normal places, and we could find those guys and those folks, and we do our own screening and testing to really understand their breadth of knowledge, and really okay, you said these things, and okay, let's prove it. We'll do tests depending on what the role is, of course. But also, it goes, we also hire more junior folks who might have the aptitude, right? So they may have come from, they might have been a modeler at Blizzard, and that's all they did was they really focused on this one very particular area of the game, or just modeling, and work with them to expand their skill set, and offer them not only we have folks in-house that could train them, give them goals and tasks that are kind of in new spaces, really kind of push them, but also give them allow them to get some training outside of Magic Fuel. So yeah, and there really needs to be a willingness though on their side as well. Not everybody wants to do all those things. Sometimes they really want to, 2D, concept artists, and I like, drawing with pencil. And that's just what I want to do. And that's fine, but it's really, they've got to want to kind of, take on new roles and try new things. And it's always uncomfortable, right? You've been a master at this one thing, and that's great. Going kind of outside of your skill set, it doesn't always feel right. It's challenging and it's new and kind of scary. So we try to encourage people to kind of expand past that.
I often hear from some of our readers where they work at these big companies, like let's say they're doing like Call of Duty franchise, right? And it's basically the same thing. They're doing like guns, and it's just like guns, tanks, or whatever. And I often hear people kind of get tired of it. They're like, they don't just thematically, they're just feeling burnt out and they want to try something else. This is like one of the reasons where they switch jobs and go to like smaller studios. And we've seen this trend like overall where they used to work at a big company and then kind of move to a startup and trying to do like a little game that they just do like 5 people or something. But probably there are the other kind of motivators for junior people. And when you're talking with these guys who are just kind of starting out, or maybe they're fresh out of school, how do you kind of help them, guide them around this industry and around like team dynamics, making sure that they do stuff on time? Like what are like the tools that you're using to make sure that the junior people, they feel okay within the studio, not like super pressured and so on, and at the same time they have kind of opportunity to grow within your company and kind of become better?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of talking about a little bit about our onboarding process. Typically, we'll pair anyone new up with a mentor, somebody in there within their skill set or their job kind of role. Usually somebody a little bit more senior who can really kind of take them through the ropes. Let's say it's an engineer, really get caught up on our tool stack and process, can buddy up with someone. We document a lot, so there's always plenty to read. And usually that first week is just get set up, get familiar, and play the games, read Confluence, but also we also encourage them to talk with others. So usually some one-on-ones with different people in the studio just to get know who everyone is. And then, usually it starts out with something small. Even our senior folks, we usually give them a small task. Maybe a bug or two, just to get it. If it's an engineer, familiar with the code base and how things are done, but really kind of ease them into it. We've got pretty solid sprint process and just how we work, and we like to give them clear tasks, clear ownerships of the work. They get to define the work, they get to define the time, and just sort of bring them up, slowly, and then it becomes bigger and bigger tasks. Everybody, you typically should be having weekly one-on-ones with your managers. So if there's ever, hey, I'm not, I want to learn this, or I don't understand this thing, that's a great forum to kind of communicate those things. Most people, with being remote on Teams, communication flows quickly and easily. You're always, a private message away from anyone on the team. Doesn't matter what level. So communication is definitely important, but I think it's kind of bringing people up slowly, making sure that they've got all the tools available to them, and they feel comfortable, to kind of move and jump on to the next thing and bigger things.
So you mentioned kind of this mentor program, right, that you have inside, where kind of they exchange knowledge and I guess the mentor teaches about the company, but at the same time, the junior learns more about the kind of like tacit knowledge from the mentor. And my question is, how does that work in a time where it's all kind of remote work, where people are working from home, or from another state, sometimes from another country? How do you guys manage this? It seems like it has been a problem for many big companies, like Microsoft, for example. Right? They're really struggling with that. How do you guys solve it, and how do you approach this new mentality of kind of hybrid or remote work?
Gotcha. Yeah. So we just, obviously COVID hit everyone. 2020 was a big change for us. We went to full remote, I think in February 2020. And then we finally shut our physical studio down in May last year. And it definitely has its challenges, but I think it's also opened up a lot of possibilities for people. I think it allows actually smaller studios like ourselves to now compete with a Microsoft, with a Facebook, with a Google, who are building these incredible campuses. How somebody like us supposed to compete? Our hallmark kind of go-to was like, hey, our studio's above Drake's Brewery, and some people really like that. That's about all we had. But now we could offer flexible work times, work at home, and a better work-life balance. And in some ways, we could compete with those other larger companies. Since we're smaller, I think it affords us to be able to give a little bit more attention. I don't think no one gets lost. There's no one kind of falling through the cracks. And, again, everybody's got their mentors, their managers that I think we spend a lot of time with each other. We try to encourage, we have daily stand-ups. We have a weekly kind of wrap up, and, it's always cameras on. And it's really just trying to keep, when it's the work hours, we kind of expect people to be on, and there's just a high level of communication and engagement, I think, from the team is what I see across the board. And it's just sort of a different way that now that we operate. But again, we use Teams now. We're using Slack in some cases as well. But you're always kind of a click away from starting a call and being face to face with someone. And yeah, we do have people across the world. The bulk of us are in kind of the West Coast, but we have folks in the Philippines and in the UK, Korea. So yeah, we make it work.
I heard a lot of companies saying, basically, kind of supporting what you just said, like that. Before, it was very challenging to hire someone who's like of, a certain caliber, if they got an offer from Facebook or Google, and it wasn't just about a compensation or benefits, but it was a lot about all the other, like, free lunches and all the other stuff. And now, I like maybe like 5 days ago, I had a call with this guy who's like a senior tech artist, kind of like this unicorn position, right? Everybody's looking for those guys. And he said, well, I took another offer from a different company, and they're just like, a couple of streets away from each other. And I said, well, why did you move? Like, what were the reasoning? And he said, well, basically they allowed me to work from home. So I didn't have to go to the office at all. Like, I can just work from home. And it was just a better deal for me because I have like a kid, and I want to help my wife, and I want to have like a better kind of work-life balance, which is, I don't know, it's like, it's strange to me because when you have a kid and you work from home, it is kind of challenging. So my question is, like, when you kind of jumped into this post-COVID, employee-employer relationship, do you feel like the stuff is taking longer to do, or is it just the same, or do you feel like you need to have kind of more control, or maybe some other elements of how to engage people, how to make sure that they are work as a team and not just like a bunch of people with computers everywhere.
Right. Yeah, I think it's the same, if not better now. And I think a lot of that just goes back to some of the things you were just saying, and it goes back to how people could have now kind of a better work-life balance, right? So I'm not on the road 2 hours a day, just stuck in traffic and getting annoyed and getting angry and still have, know I have work to do to catch up, plus all, everything going on at home. In general, I feel happier. I think most people, we do studio surveys, feel happier. And I think if you got a happy employee, you got a more productive employee. And I feel like we're more productive. You've got to work differently, though. You do have to be communicate quite a bit on whatever platform you're using. You kind of have to have that we're on mentality and an expectation. If I've got a question or something, the other person's going to get back. And I think it creates, just giving people, again, that kind of flexibility of their hours. And hey, you've got, the work you signed up to do. Get it if you get it done. If that's at midnight, 12 a.m. and you need something to do during the day, hey, that's fine. At the end of the week, is the work done, and is it done to quality, and we're happy? I think that's the important thing, and sort of the mind shift, I think. But it like you said, it does make some things a little bit more challenging. There are times where you just wish you could be in a room with, one or two other people drawing on a whiteboard. That those things are sometimes hard. And hey, in our case, we're kind of lucky. A lot of us actually work in sort of the same kind of valley, and we've done, if there's something real important comes up, we're able to kind of, go to one person's house, or we'll rent an office space for a day and get those things done if it's needed.
So we have a lot of people who are just starting out on the website, and they might be students, or they are juniors, or something like that. As an employer, right? What would you say to those people who are looking to get some kind of work, who are looking to get like a permanent position in the studio? What are the skills that they should, nurture, build? Is this just like the technological stuff, maybe some, soft skills? What are the things that are important today on this market? Like, do you just need to be a coder to get employed, or are there opportunities for people who do something else as well?
Yeah, no, I think there's opportunities across the board, really. And I think what you need to focus on might be a little bit dependent on that role. Coder versus an artist, for example, a producer. I think, the number one thing I look for, and we do hire new college grads or recent college grads, kind of what is your resume? What have you done during that time? Get out there and make games. Like, there is really no, if that's what you want to do, there's really, I just think about, 15, 20 years ago, it was definitely harder. And now, again, with, Unity Engine, Unreal, there's just so many ways that you could be producing something. If you're an artist, get out there and draw, build your portfolio, get your page up that shows off your work. If you're a producer, if you want to be a producer, okay, well, there's a bunch of other new college grads out there. Do you have what it takes to go form a little team and start building a game? These are all things that I think it's being a little bit self-motivated and trying to accomplish what you can with the resources you have and the time you have. And I think that all those things are really important. I also think try something different. I'll go back to how I started in this industry. And I was a technical recruiter in the late 90s, and there was a crash, and I needed to find something different. And I really enjoyed games. I didn't know what I wanted to do in there. I answered an ad in the Mercury News. Anybody from the Silicon Valley knows the Mercury, and started, in QA, and really from the kind of the bottom up. I got lucky. I actually used SimCity, was one of my first games I loved. I said that's what I was interested in, and yep, I got in with Maxis, and grabbing coffee next to Will. But that's a great way to kind of learn the industry and just get your foot in the door and meet people, and learn about the industry. There are so many different roles and things you could be doing inside of games to contribute to make games. And you're young. It's still time to explore those things and really just learn. So those are a couple things.
Kip, thank you so much. I think it was very inspiring, especially having coffee with Will. I think a lot of people would cut their arm and their leg for the opportunity to just exchange, some words with him. But so we kind of talked a little bit about these younger specialists who are moving into the industry, and also like people who are in the industry and how your career journey as well. And I have this final question, which is framed by the things that are happening around the technology space in games. And I don't know, probably you've seen it like on social media or anywhere, is that there is like a lot of AI generated art right now. And, if you're in this field, if you're like in Silicon Valley, there are like hundreds of startups that are using AI to do something in games. That is like animation done in games by AI, or, AI agents that control NPCs and so on and so forth. And a lot of that technology is basically used to build games, like to build environments, to create concept art, to do something else and something else. And of course, this sparks certain fears in the community where they don't really, feel safe anymore, figuring that maybe, Skynet is going to build my next game and they don't really need me anymore. So from your perspective as a leader, as a manager, how do you feel like you're going to building games in like the next 5 years? Like, are you going to switch to AI tech, or are there still going to be people, in the trenches, so to speak, and creating code and creating art?
Yeah, I mean, in the next 5 years, definitely. I think there'll always be a need for real people, the human touch. The roles might change a little bit. I even think about some of the games we've built, with procedural generated maps, things like that. You still needed artists to create that content within the system, and engineers to code it, and designers to kind of set parameters, right? So it things are getting smarter, and there's new technology out there that is advancing, and but I think there's always going to be that need for the human touch and fingerprint on the game. I don't see that going away.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and we'll share the links to your studio's website in the description. And if you have some open positions, send them to us. We'll be very happy to publish them over there.
Yeah, we are actually looking for a server engineer and a producer right now. So
awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Thanks for enjoying another episode of the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. Check out upcoming episodes on the 80 Level website at 80.lv. Join our career site at 80.lv/RFP. And share our podcast with friends and on your social networks.